events happening in Nigeria, in terms of the cost of living. And, since the beginning of the year, I say, if we had been tracking Nigerian economy last year, even since this year, that's 2014 to this year, you saw that massive volatility. The Nigerian Naira was the influx, and inflation fed relentless. Inflation has been very high, but here in late 2025, the narrative has started to shift little by little. We begin to see the reforms, are starting to bite and leading to a new economic reality in Nigeria. So, and we want to talk about the cost of living in Nigeria. I want to look at places like Lagos, Abuja. Three most expensive cities in Nigeria can live in is Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. So if you look at the inflations and the cost of living in Nigeria, things has from that 2014 to late 2015, we see what they call hyperinflation in Nigeria. Things are still very expensive at the moment in Nigeria, especially for the average Nigeria. But the wide inflationary spiral of 2014 has started to ease. The inflation has started to come down gradually in Nigeria, but things are still very hard for ordinary Nigerians at the moment. The question isn't how much things cost, but it is how stable or the cost of things are in the moment. To understand the cost of living in Nigeria, you will have to understand the three major economic forces at play. And number one is inflation. We've had a hyperinflation in 2014 to the very particular moment to late 2025. The National Bureau of Statistics reported a major ease with headline inflation drop to 16.05% as of October 2025. That's a significant moderation from the peak, but it means prices are still rising just at a slower rate. So the inflation is high and the prices of things are gradually coming down, but it's on a very slow rate, on a very slow rate. And the second one look like is the Naira exchange rate. The Naira has not been stable. It's been exchanging for 1,500 Naira to the dollar, so all these things affect FX, affect the inflationary measures, So the Naira has not been stable since 2014, till the very moment. After the unification of the FS window, Naira has settled into a relatively stable, right? Stable range. We are seeing the dollar trading around 145, 145, to 148 to $1 at the moment as we speak. So that's and in the market at the moment. And this stability helps temper the cost of imported goods. And so apparently the Naira has just been at 145 to 180 Naira per dollar. And this affects in terms of goods being imported into the country. Third, the major issue we had is the issue of petrol. The removal of the petrol subsidy, right, has permanently reset transport costs, gasoline, and gasoline, petrol is around about 1,000 Naira per liter to 1,070 Naira per liter. This is the single biggest factor driving up transport fares and the cost of moving food and goods and services across the country. So when if the energy comes down, if petrol comes down, definitely the food prices will come down more. So the cost of transportation of moving food, food from across the states in Nigeria is becoming very, very expensive because petrol at the moment is selling for 1,000 to 150 Naira per liter in Nigeria at the moment. So another thing is that the crisis, there has rent crisis. In Nigeria right now, rent is very expensive, especially in the three major cities in Nigeria: Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Abuja. These three cities are one of the most expensive cities in Nigeria in terms of rent. So if you look at these cities, rent can vary. If you look at Port Harcourt, facing a severe housing affordability crisis, and where you live is the single most important decision for your, for your budget. So and these cities, Port Harcourt, Lagos, and Abuja, they are not relenting because of rent. In Lagos, we have two words, two words in Lagos: the island, which is Victoria Island, Lekki, Lekki Phase One, Ikoyi, those three places, right? And you have the mainland, which is Yaba and Ikeja, you know. So these are two major places. If you look at Victoria Island, for instance, the prices there are quite very expensive, very, very high. A comfortable two-bedroom apartment in a prime location in Lekki, for instance, like Lekki Phase 1, can easily cost you between 1.8 and to 1.3 million naira annually. You know, this is before service charge, which can add up to 25 to 40% into your monthly bill. You know, if you come to the mainland is Yaba area like Ikeja. These are the mainland of Lagos. Well, while offering more value, these areas are not cheap. They are not cheap, you know. They are not cheap to live in. A decent two-bedroom apartment here still costs between 1.3 and 1.8 million naira annually around Yaba and Ikeja area of Lagos, which is the mainland. You know, if you are an expatriate or a high-earning professional, expect to budget at least $1,000 to at least $2,500 per month for a very decent, beautiful apartment in Lagos, a place to live. So, and that would definitely be like place to me, at least maybe the island, which is Ikoyi, you know, Victoria Island, Lekki Phase 1 or Lekki Phase 2. So the cost of rent has really gone up in this particular season, though the inflationary rate has to come down. So if you live in a place like Lagos, it's a bit very expensive. But there are other cities in Nigeria which you can actually live, which cost of rent is quite cheaper, you know. And place like Enugu, for instance, Nambauchi, Gombe, Kaduna, you know, and many other cities in Nigeria, Calabar, Akwa Ibom, in Ebonyi, you know, these places. So many other states, like the state, even Ibadan, for instance, you know. Now let's talk about food prices. Is food prices coming down where you are? Please leave a comment where you are, if anywhere in the city you live in Nigeria. Let's know the condition of things where you are. Is your food prices coming down? We read in the newspapers, the government said food has come down, but when you go to the market, we know rice, for instance, used to sell almost like 100,000, 170,000. But late this year, Big Bull rice was selling for 65. It came down to 65,000 naira. And the other day, somebody told me Big Bull of 50 kg of Big Bull rice. This is our Nigerian rice. It costs almost by it's now 50 to 55,000. You know, so it used to be as of last year, it was 100 and something thousand. So the prices of rice has come down. A couple of other items, but the inflation is things are very slow. Things are very very slow. If you look at in terms of pricing of a lot of food services, they're still very expensive. For the common man, things are still very, very expensive in the market at the moment. Food utility costs as the next major hurdle in Nigeria. Despite the easing of headline inflation, food prices remain the most painful expense for most households, you know, in Nigeria. Food is still very, very expensive. And the government is saying that food has come down. If you go to the market, few things have come down, a lot of things are still very, very expensive. Maybe probably is because number one, the transportation, cost of transportation is very high, right? And the Naira is not stable. The Naira is still exchanging at 1,400 something to 1,480 to $1. That's a lot. If the Naira comes down to maybe $1,000, 1,000 Naira to $1, definitely we will see that effect in the food prices. You know, for food, while food inflation is slowing, prices are still exceptionally high compared to reform levels, you know, that we are seeing. A dozen of large egg, for instance, now approximately is 3,400 naira for a dozen of egg, which is 24, 3,400 naira. You know, 1 kg of fresh tomatoes is around the 1,600 naira. A basic lunch in a fast food in a fast food restaurant, you know, roughly about 4,500 to about 5,300, up to even 6,000 naira. Those are just basic food. You know, when you go to the restaurants, if you want to eat at the moment right now in Nigeria, so the basic amount you spend start from 4,000 naira, 4,700 to almost 6,000 naira for just basic meal in the restaurants in Nigeria right now. You know, so the inflationary measure is still very high. If you're cooking at home, you know, and shopping wisely, A single person budget for monthly grocery for food, for instance, now can range from 80,000 to 150,000. That's for a single person a month. For a single person a month, if you cook yourself. Right now in Nigeria, man, you can't eat out. If you're somebody who eat out all the time, you can't eat out as you used to, because right now food prices is very high. Restaurant, I really imagine you're spending almost like 5,000 naira just to start. These are just average meal. It's not a full meal to 6,000 naira. You better start cooking for yourself, right? So averagely for a single person, you're spending about 80,000 to 150,000 naira for food a month in Nigeria at the moment. I don't know where you are, maybe other part of Nigeria. We're taking these statistics like from Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. I also heard that food are very expensive in Port Harcourt. So if you live in other states in Nigeria, and these prices we're talking about now is different, please let us know in the comment line. When it comes to utility, reliable electricity remain costly in Nigeria. That's right. And light is not so stable in Nigeria. Often relying on generators. Expect monthly bills for basic services, electricity, water, and waste for a standard apartment to be around 80,000 to 100,000 for a moderate consumption level. Fast, unlimited home internet will run about 18,000 to 25,000 per month for internet. At least 18,000 to 25,000 per month for internet. So apparently, if you put some of these things in place, you realize the inflation measures kind of seem very high. Estimated budget for Lagos, for a single person is at least 1.2 to 1.5 million. If you live in a place like Lagos, that also refers to Abuja or Port Harcourt, because these three cities are one of the most expensive cities in Nigeria. So what is the final verdict? If you look at the final verdict cost of living, what is the final cost of living in Nigeria in late 2025? Nigeria remains a country of stark contrast. The cost of living is high right now, driven by the unified exchange rate, expensive fuel, petrol wahala, and the crushing housing market. Rent is expensive. Petrol right now, energy, we are facing energy crisis since the removal of subsidy. So these are major things that's really affecting the economy, food prices, and everything in Nigeria, because petrol is not stable, it's very, very expensive. The exchange rate, the Naira is still weak. The total estimated monthly cost for a single person living comfortably in a city like Lagos, is easily about 1 million Naira, and not including rent for a good apartment. The moderation in inflation rate is a positive sign. Yeah, we see that things have started to ease, but it's very, very slow. Got to be honest with you, and indicating that government policies are having some stabilizing effect. And the crushing has having, of course, the government policies is gradually working, but the core challenge is for 2026 remains the same. Wages need to catch up. The minimum wage is not working anymore. The government they just have to be increased in wages for people to be able to survive. If we continue the way we are now, if the Naira or the petrol price does not come down, So the key to saving in Nigeria 2050 is to cook locally. So many of you don't know how to cook. If you start cooking now, because you're going to save a lot of money, it's the only way you can live well right now, because you cannot be spending 5,000 naira up 6,000 naira for just a basic meal. So you can ask, if you cook, then you're going to save a lot of money. So utilize public transport, or you share, you can share a ride. It's the only way to reduce costs right now because of cost of petrol. And choose this. Or another option is that you can actually choose a state in Nigeria that is cheaper. You can live outside of Lagos, Port Harcourt, or for instance now, Abuja. Akwa Ibom is there. Ebonyi is there. Cross River is there, which is Calabar. Bauchi is there. Jos is there. Katna is there. There's so many other states. The Ibadan is there, which is quite, if you want to really maybe do business close to Lagos, you can actually live in Ibadan, for instance. Even Ogun State, Abeokuta. I don't know too much about housing in Abeokuta, but I know Ibadan, you can get a fair deal in Ibadan. So what are your experiences? Let us know in the comment section, and please like and subscribe to this video. I will see you in the next one. I'm WP Praise. Bye now. All right, see you soon.